the Democracy Works Foundation. And so this session is really to think about how we can engage more meaningfully in the G20 processes as South African citizens or African citizens, and then how we can use the African Union's kind of G20 membership to promote youth priorities. By show of hands, who's heard of the G20 before? Okay, so obviously we have experienced this whirlwind of a G20 experience this year, and I think it will take us some time to kind of figure out what it actually means for all of us. But this session is particularly focused on how youth can kind of become more involved in G20 processes.
One of the key purposes of the G20 is to set the development agenda. The other part of it is to bring new people into that conversation that haven't traditionally been part of it. I mean, we, for example, had here members of the Indigenous community coming forward and saying, look, we haven't been part of this conversation, we would like to be.
We need to stop problematizing young people, that even when we create spaces for conversation is through tokenism. But also on the data, I think one of the things that we must think about is what the data does not say. Yes. Because I think that's also very important, because there are certain things that the data does not say.
There's so much to look forward to and so much to interrogate from South Africa's legendary G20 presidency. And I know a lot of youth are feeling as though the impacts are not necessarily tangible, but they are. Under the G20, we had one of the engagement groups, the B20, the Business 20. And one of the key outcomes from the B20 is actually a very large startup fund. At this critical juncture, civil society is needed now more than ever. We are aware of the challenges that multilateralism is facing across the globe. And at this moment, what we really need to do is to continue to push the theme of South Africa's G20 presidency. We must advocate for solidarity, for equality, and for sustainability.
South Africa has a number of legacy projects from the kind of social summit and also the G20 that they have chosen to support. And a lot of those working group kind of recommendations made it into the decision making of which projects they were going to support as legacy projects of our G20 presidency going forward.
There's something that I'm working on, and with regards to environmental justice, specifically in the Western Cape. But I do wonder, when you approach civil society, when you approach faith-based organizations, is there a more subtle way of communication?
So today's been really fantastic. We've had an opportunity to engage with young people on the G20. As we all know, this is Africa's first G20 as well as South Africa's first G20, and it's been really an important morning of discussing what we've achieved over the last year as South Africa, how we've identified some of our priorities on the Y20 but also the South African G20, but also looking at some of the concerns that young people have had that they don't feel have been adequately covered.
I thought it was very engaging. It felt like they really were looking to involve the youth and my demographic, and while some of the terminology and things were I didn't completely understand because I didn't study climate change. I did feel like it was very informative, and I've found out a lot of organizations and information that I can get involved in as a young person.
So one of the targets that have been achieved within the Leaders' Declaration is a recommitment towards the Nelson Mandela Bay targets, which aim to reduce the NEET rate, so the rate of young people not in education, employment or training, by 10% across the G20 member states. And it's quite a good reaffirmation of member states' commitments to ensure that young people are on productive pathways to employment and productivity, so that they're not reliant on the state, but they're able to be entrepreneurial, they're able to get education, or at least find skills to help them thrive in an evolving economy. So that's been one of the great successes of the presidency. There are a few other successes as it pertains to health and well-being. We saw a declaration that was really strong on the issue of women, children and adolescent health. We know that Africa has a very vast adolescent population, and I think domestically we're also well aware of the dynamics around adolescent pregnancies or teenage pregnancies and the actions that need to be taken by the state as well as communities to ensure that we reduce the vulnerabilities of women and girls as it pertains to teenage pregnancies, gender-based violence and other social ills.